So hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 244 today of Level Up. 60 minutes, of course, of live Q&A where your questions really do drive the show. Today, we're picking up the second part of our ongoing discussion about how to manage agile projects. And as so many of us are faced with the challenge of delivering professional project management in an agile context, it seems a meritorious subject to be able to spend time on. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can find out so much more about what we all do in our channel. So do please give this video a like and, of course, subscribe to find out more. Ella today, I think, is over in the social chat, and she is going to be posting an invitation for you to introduce yourself and also the city. Tell us the city, please, from where you're joining. I've just been told it's actually not Ella today, it's Shanice. So I do apologise, Shanice. Great to have you online today on behalf of the team. If your question is selected, then of course your name's going to appear in the credits at the end of the show. So do get those in early and stay with us to see all of it happening. Let's jump straight in then and meet our expert panel. Bina Champaneria is an accredited project management trainer whose work has included IT systems development and rollout and adoption all over the world, with project experience within the university and marine project environments. Bina is a trusted coach and mentor to many of her clients and has a background in fashion, retail, construction, and many other industries to draw upon. Welcome back, Bina.
Thank you very much, Nick. It's great to be back, and I'm looking forward to having some great discussions with the panel and, of course, looking at the questions as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much indeed. Farah HEBA rejoins today. She, of course, is a product owner and trainer who works on a range of different digital platforms, and her client base extends from the public to the private sector and across many fast-paced and culturally diverse environments. With a keen attention to detail, I think it's fair to say that she focuses on bringing the very best out of every client that she works with and their teams. Welcome back, Farah.
Thank you, Nick. Well, really delighted to be here today and looking forward to the great questions that we're having from the viewers.
Excellent, thank you. And I can already see lots of people jumping in online to the chat, which is absolutely brilliant. Richard Campbell rejoins today. He is, of course, the Director of Product Engagement at the Agile Business Consortium, and he's responsible for developing and delivering the consortium's portfolio of products that advance business agility. He spent his career working in the advanced technology sector in a mix of commercial and product management roles. Welcome back to Level Up, Richard. Great to see you.
Thanks, Nick. I'm looking forward to another session of connecting with project managers all over the world, embedding, trying to find some way of embedding agility in their way of working. So a great panel here. Look forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you so much indeed. Mark Kouwenhoven is, of course, project management expert at his organisation, and he specialises in the world of PPP and risk and so on. He's got a wide range of experience in leading practice methods, an accomplished facilitator and a developer of online simulation content that really does help bring scenarios to life for his clients. Welcome back to Level Up, Mark.
Thanks, Nick. Looking forward to the show again.
Excellent, thank you. Wijnand is a lead trainer at the Capgemini Academy over in the Netherlands, and he specialises in a range of project management methods and approaches. He's worked both in the corporate and the SME markets, and he brings a pragmatic and experienced approach to helping clients solve their business problems. Welcome back, Wijnand.
Thank you, Nick, and I'm really looking forward with this expert panel to dive into the questions of all the viewers.
Brilliant. Thank you so much indeed. We'll get to the viewers momentarily. Giles Lindsay completes our expert panel today. He is, of course, the CEO at Agile Delta Consulting, where he focuses on transformation, agile leadership, and product strategy. An accomplished coach in his own right, he's empowered numerous teams to adopt and optimize an agile mindset. And he was recently included in the 2023 listing by CIO magazine of the 10 most influential leaders in tech to follow. He's also, in some regard, a colleague of Richard's, as he's a non-exec director at the Agile Business Consortium. Welcome back, Giles. Lovely to see you today.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. It's nice. There's a sort of a familial feel here, having done a number of these nows with a number of the colleagues here. So it's great to be back and taking part.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. Now, no show is good without questions, and we've got lots of people joining online. So I'm looking forward to reading all of your questions, folks. So do say hello and start putting your questions in. And the person who's going to get the questions through to the panelists is, of course, our question master for today, Charlotte, who joins us from the Thames Valley in the UK. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thanks, Nick. It's a pleasure to be here on what we found for part one was an incredibly busy and exciting show.
Absolutely. Now, we carried over with everybody's patience a few of the questions that we didn't have time to answer in episode one. So we will try and get to those if we can today, but we welcome lots of new ones as well. So on that note, Charlotte, I think we should jump straight in and put our first question to the panel, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question from one of our panelists, Bina, as our first question. How does running a project in an agile manner help with managing risks?
All right. Well, it's a great question. And I think, Richard, if you could, can you start us off, please? And then we're going to hear from Giles.
Yeah, certainly, Nick. So what I'd say is that the beauty of approaching this with agility is that you're managing risks as an embedded part of how you run your project. Because you're not trying to predict all of the risks up front, you are assessing them almost in as close to real time as you possibly can, and then putting in place the appropriate measures to handle that risk as they come up. So I'd say it doesn't need a separate risk management process per se, because it's embedded in how you do it if you're doing it properly.
Thank you very much indeed. Really agree with that. Giles, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Mark.
Yeah, I think that was a great start for us. It is the fact that we are delivering this work iteratively. We're delivering this work incrementally. There's obviously improved communication and collaboration, with agile ways of working. The feedback loops, all of these things are just going to allow us to deal with risk earlier in process as these things come up and sort of nobble us. But also we're going to be able to deal with prioritization of the value of those risks as well. Deal with things like scope creep earlier in process to sort of limit the fact that those types of risks usually creep into a project or a product. So, again, I think there are lots of positives using an agile manner to actually deal with risk in a particular project.
Thank you so much. I do completely agree with that. It's about, we often have risk registers, don't we, that we try it proactively and look at and manage and mitigate and so on. And it just seems so much more sensible to be able to do that iteratively and to do it as early as possible. Thank you so much indeed. Really do appreciate that. Mark, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Farah.
Well, of course, I agree with the previous answers, but on a different note, I think we need to be more explicit on risk when doing an agile management style, having an agile mindset, just to make sure that we don't forget them, overlook them. I fully agree that it's more embedded and more proactive on risk management. But being a fan of risk management as a hobby, it's a different way of looking at it.
It certainly is. Thank you very much indeed. Farah, your thoughts, and then we might go to Bina for her reflection.
Thank you, Nick. Well, of course, I would say that the incremental and the iterative nature of agile practices make them well suited for the management of risks. But when it comes to risks, in my opinion, there are the negative risks, but there are also the positive risks. So all the opportunities that we can identify, that we can take care of, that would help us into exploiting or having a positive impact in our outcomes in all what we're building. So when it comes to managing the risks and identifying them, assessing them throughout your product, the product building, do consider negative risks, but do not overlook or remove from your heads the positive risks and the opportunities that you can uncover.
Yeah, I understand. I think we do tend to focus on problems all of the time, don't we? When you're trying to manage a project, you kind of groan inwardly because here comes another problem, kind of thing, and you don't actually take enough of the opportunity to pause and reflect on all the things that are going really well. And things that you are doing right, the team is doing right, kind of around you. So really good point. Thank you, Farah. And Bina, now you raised the question, and I know that you've worked with an awful lot of people. In your experience, does it help in managing that risk profile for the project?
I think the risk of developing the wrong thing and not getting the customer's acceptance is something that we really need to employ, put something in so we do get sign off. So yes, we're working closely with the customer, as people have said, working incrementally, getting feedback is really important. But also it's about guiding the customer to see what the product is. So develop models or some kind of prototypes. That helps. So you make a mock-up of something, no, that sounds like a funny word, doesn't it? Mock-up. You make a prototype of something to say, look, this is what it's going to look like. Is this right? So we're capturing the risk of it being the wrong thing because we're guiding the customer along. So working with them, developing something that they can see means that we're managing the risk of the customer not being happy, and we're capturing that early instead of waiting till the end of the project. And also we're managing the risk of the project not being delayed, not costing more, because those should be fixed in Agile. So we're keeping a track of that as well, as I think Richard mentioned, working incrementally. Something else though, I mean, Agile can bring its own risks, like if the organization is not prepared, they don't understand the Agile way of working, that could pose a risk. So we need to sort of understand those kind of aspects early on and see what can we do about it to bring the organization along. So it's not just about product development, but yeah, everything all the panels said is very good, very spot on.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Bina. Thank you for the question as well. I think it's a great segue actually between the previous episode and this one, about the practical ways in which you can really make a difference, both to colleagues who are working in an Agile environment and also by bringing this agility, this way of thinking, if you like, to bear in your everyday practice as a project manager. Now, look, I can see lots of folks online, but for some reason, LinkedIn, we're all shy today. We're quite shy. So thank you to the colleagues who are actually out there who have introduced themselves. Rim, thank you so much for saying hello from Tunisia. But for everybody else who's out there and you're feeling, I don't really want to introduce myself, now is the time to do so, please. So just say hello, let us know your name and, of course, the city from where you're joining, country from where you're joining around the world. We have a pretty large global audience, lots of people on LinkedIn today, all watching, and some folks on YouTube as well. So welcome if you're on either platform. Charlotte, in the meantime, while we wait for all of those names and places around the world, let's take our next question to the panel, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question from Jenny Farah. How does the culture of an organization impact the agility of a project?
Okay, Wijnand, why don't you kick us off on Jenny's question?
Well, it's a very interesting question because agility is not just something of a project. It's actually something that has to run through the organization. So if your organization doesn't know what Agile is, or if they are not used to or thinking in an Agile manner, or not used to tackling problems or looking at diminished scope in a way that Agile does, your project will not run. It will just pretend to be Agile, and it will pretend to use all the Agile ceremonies, but it will not be Agile. It will just be a traditional project with detailed design up front, as I like to call it, instead of Agile.
That's a very astute and, if I might say, accurate representation sometimes of people who are trying to kind of showboat a little bit, if you like, rather than truly think it through and truly, reflect and adopt those Agile principles, if you like, in the philosophy. So thank you very much, Von. Yeah, that's really great. Giles, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Mark.
Yeah, I think another great term for it is what Wijnand was just talking about is fake Agile. It would have ended up being. This is a great question. And obviously culture and organization is something that has to be really supported when you take on these new ways of working. Three things come to mind for me. Firstly, an emphasis on collaboration. And for me, cultures that prioritize teamwork, have great open communication, they can facilitate smoother, agile ways of working because of those better team dynamics, frequent interactions that the people end up having. Secondly, a culture that simply embraces change and is flexible to obviously adapting new processes, adapts more readily to agile ways of working, which does require frequent tuning, frequent adjustments, course corrections, etc., etc. And then lastly for me is leadership support. Agile projects thrive in environments where leaders actively seek support from other people in the organization, and they give things such as empowerment and autonomy rather than acting in that sort of traditional command and control, bureaucratic micromanagement style. So for me, that leadership support in that organization is also very powerful.
Yeah, it's a really interesting change, isn't it, from the words that are sometimes spoken by leaders to being able to witness that true servant leadership style behavior. I might have applied that term in too broad a context there, but this sense of enabling others, this sense of being there to support and provide capability to others is critical, I think. So thank you, Giles. Mark, your thoughts, please. Then we'll go to Richard.
So culture is a very big word. I try to bring it down to something more pragmatic. It's the way how we do things. And if it doesn't fit the agility you need in a project, there are loads of risks, and you need to make sure it fits in the context. So you need to educate more, let them follow by example, and try to win them for you, working with you in the project and make it a success.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It is indeed a huge thing, isn't it? The whole culture of the organization, how the values are expressed day to day, how people relate to each other, how people work together or not, and all of these different things. Super important. Thank you. Richard, your thoughts?
Yeah, picking up on the point that Mark was making, and actually specifically the empowerment point that Giles raised, there's a report called The State of Agile Culture that's done annually. And one of the key findings that it found was that there's a big disconnect between how leadership, the top levels of an organization, perceive their levels of agility relative to everyone else in the organization. It's firm belief that agility is done down there. Other people do the agile stuff. And what you actually need to be an agile organization and empower a project to be successful, the top level need to allow the team to make decisions. The people closest to the problem need to be making those decisions. But if that is not empowered in the organization, that's going to make your project really difficult to run in an agile manner. So I think that sort of sums up culture is critically important. If you haven't got the right culture, your project can't really be agile, or it's always going to be putting the brakes on.
Thank you, Richard. I think that report could be very, very helpful to people who are also flying the flag for Agile, within an organization, and they're trying to be that situational leader, if you like. They might not have the authority to make it happen across their business, but, they're there representing it. And if we can get a link to that survey out for people, then we will do. I think we may well have a link now available. So there we go. Thank you very much indeed, Connor, the technical director today, and the social team scrambling behind the scenes to get that up on display. So do have a look at that, everybody. And I guess if I could put this question to you, Richard, that as it's an annual survey, you would like more people to participate each year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So what I'd say there is the data that's captured is from organizations all over the world. And some people might not even know that their organizations are being assessed. So there's not necessarily a place where you'd go to and know that you are actually being assessed. But we're trying to be, because it's one of those things, if you know you're being monitored, you behave differently from if we're just monitoring you secretly. So there's a whole bunch of things about the research that's done there. But yes, please, I think the most important thing is read the report, understand what it does, and feed it back to us. Let us know what you think. Does that apply? Is that helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. It might be a topic actually for a future event to talk about the trends in the adoption of more agile cultures across organizations in the world. And anonymized data is very, very helpful to us for that. It gives everybody an opportunity to kind of think about whereabouts would you self-evaluate and put your team, your organization on this continuum of good practice, if you like. Excellent. Well, look, very good. Let's jump out then and give a shout out to many of our producers who are online. If you're watching online, then it's your questions that drive the show. So you're actually producing the show in real time. So Rim, thanks again for being first today to say who you are and where you're from the very beautiful country of Tunisia. Thank you so much indeed for joining. Great to see your contribution in the social chat. And also we've got Ahmed, who is joining from Saudi. I'm in need of a little heat actually today. Okay, we're heading for a public holiday weekend in the UK, which is always chilly and often a little damp. So there we are. So great to have you online today from Saudi. And Ishmael joins from Greater Manchester, which I think might be sunny today. I heard somebody tell me that it was actually quite bright in the northwest of the UK this morning. And I think we got one or two more online just to kind of say hi to. Marcin rejoins from Warsaw. It's definitely sun shining there ahead of the weekend. So thanks so much, Marcin, for joining mid-afternoon for you in Warsaw. And Joanne joins from the Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. John, I'm not remotely jealous, all right, of where you are. Not at all, okay? But there we are. Brilliant to have such a global audience online today. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. I think what we'll do, with your patience, we'll move on, Charlotte, and we'll take our next question to the panel, please.
Thanks, Nick. Our next question is from Mark. And Mark asks, how do you deal with waterfall teams and scrum teams in the same project? Do's and don'ts.
This is quite an interesting one, isn't it? Because you don't always get to choose everybody on project teams. They're often elected for you. And then you arrive as the project manager in order to be able to, really start getting everybody to work together. Let's mix it up a little. Farah, why don't you start us off on this? How do you go about bringing people together?
I would say, first of all, do not expect to have a seamless relationship and people aligned on all the techniques, the manners, the approaches that we are using, whether we're on a waterfall team or in an agile team. So try to address the differences upfront and make them communicate and define an action plan in case there are things that they do not align on, in case that they need to figure out or decide upon a technique, a tool to use, or a method that they are used to. So my primary advice would be make them talk, make them communicate in order to make sure that the differences are highlighted upfront rather than leaving them on the ground when you're starting your job.
Thank you very much indeed. And Farah, just if I may stay with you for a moment, how important is good facilitation at that? You're saying make people talk to each other. How important is it to have a range of techniques to be able to facilitate those kinds of communication exchanges, communication building, trust building?
I would say critical, because at the beginning, this is what you're going to build. I mean, that's the basis. The communication and the path you're starting at that time would be the critical phase in your project. By the moment people get used to one another, by the moment they get used to the way they work with each other, to the techniques that they are using, that's, let's say, the easiest part. But at the beginning, when you're starting, when you're facilitating that communication and the setup of the ground rules between the members of the team, that's the critical part, and that's the critical moment where facilitation skills are necessary.
Thank you so much indeed. Richard, your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Wijnand.
Well, I think it's a very, I think the point that, that's important when you're looking at projects which are made up of teams with different approaches, it's inevitable that it's going to come on. There are certain elements of a project. If you consider a construction project, there are some things which are bound to be done where you are doing it in a highly predictive manner. So you're able to lay everything out and you're managing that project, that element of the project in that predictive manner. However, certain things like logistics or the provision of people and skills, maybe that needs to be done far more in an iterative style. And it's this combination of things I think very often works well together. And a project manager just needs to accommodate the fact that some things are better suited to iterative styles and others are better suited to more predictive upfront styles. And that just comes with experience, quite frankly. It's in an ideal world, it's an idealistic view to think everyone's going to be able to do it in an iterative, agile way. But that just comes with experience, learning how to balance those points.
Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. Thank you, Richard. Wijnand, and then Bina.
Yeah, so my experience, I've never had a project that was designed up front or agile. You always have teams that need to create a foundation which needs to be detailed up front, needs to be stable, needs to have an environment. If you go to bigger companies, you will see that there are product teams that are working agile on product. And you, as a project manager, want some things changed on that product. So you need to just build in some features or PBIs or whatever you might call them to that team and try to get them prioritized. And the rest of your team is just working together with you. So you need to let the teams do their work, and you control only the teams that you can control, and not try to control agile teams because they are autonomous. They are controlling themselves, but you need to be able to prioritize and work together with somebody like Farah, a good PO that helps you put your things up front against other things that are less important.
Thank you very much indeed. And this is where the science meets the art, doesn't it, really?
Yep.
It's the art of reading people. It's having that empathy. It's understanding, the rhythm and the unsaid words, if I can put it that way, to be able to do that really brilliantly. And I know many colleagues on this panel today do that in real life. Okay, so thank you very much indeed, Wijnand. Let's go to Bina for your thoughts, please, and then we'll hear from Giles.
I'll just carry on from what Bina just spoke about, really. So if we talk about Scrum teams, their focus is on developing the product. So they've got their own roles, they've got their product backlog and product owners and whatever. So they're focusing on product development. And then if we talk about waterfall teams, I think what we can look at is the work that takes place before development. There's some upfront work, and that might be classed as waterfall, although I don't like using that term, but there's like a preparation, pre-project feasibility taking place beforehand. So you might consider, well, that's a waterfall team that's doing that. And within that, you've got the project manager. So there's upfront work. Then the team are developing the product, and that's where they may be using Scrum, for instance. But there has to be a connection between the teams. There has to be a connection between the PM and the Scrum team, because the Scrum team can't just, do something without knowing what are the objectives that are needed. So there has to be that communication, that link between the project manager who may be running the waterfall kind of part of it and the Scrum team who are actually developing the product. Probably similar to what Farah said about the communication, really.
Thank you so much indeed. Yeah, it's such an important thing that everybody knows, their role, that you've got clear boundaries, that you've got roles, responsibilities, all of those sorts of things, and that you are active. Project management is a verb, isn't it? You have to do something, right? So there's definitely that catalytic type work that needs to be done. Giles, I know that you've witnessed this firsthand, that you've practiced it as an agile coach and mentor, and also I think you've started to capture some of that experience in some of your writing.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I mean, as a technology leader, I've led dozens and dozens of teams over the last 25, 30 years. And, I've had teams who are going to work in waterfall ways, they're going to work in agile ways, a number of different approaches. I have actually in my book, which I think there's a QR code available now, I've actually listed out 5 do's and 3 don'ts when you are dealing with waterfall teams, agile teams coming together. And I've just brought the list up from one of the draft manuscripts. So hopefully it's still the same version as in the book. But number 1 is define clear interfaces. So establish clear points of interaction between the teams. Number 2, foster communication. So encourage regular communication between the teams through having scheduled meetings, scheduled updates. 3, for the do's, utilize hybrid techniques where possible. So implement hybrid approaches that allowed for the phase planning in waterfall, but the iterative development in agile ways of working. Number 4 is align project milestones. So coordinate project milestones and deliverables between the various teams that you're working with. And lastly, on the do's, educate and train. So provide training and resources to help members from both teams understand the fundamentals of each other's methodologies, each other's ways of working. For the 3 don'ts, I've got avoid isolation. Don't let the teams work in silos without that interaction that makes the project successful at the end of the day and delivers value to the customer. Don't impose methodologies either. Avoid forcing one team's way of working on the other. And lastly, don't neglect the risks. I know something Mark's been passionate about on this today, but do not ignore the risks that come from integrating these 2 approaches, such as timing conflicts that can happen between the 2 ways of working and potentially misaligned deliverables. So those are my 5 do's and my 3 don'ts from really just the experiences I've had over the last 25, 30 years.
Excellent. Thank you so much indeed. I want to go and buy the book. Actually, I think you've sold it to the man in the front here. So thank you very much indeed, Giles. And what was lovely there as well is I think I heard a high degree of correlation actually between what other experts on the panel were also saying and your, finessed summary. Totally. So thank you for that. Now, Shanice Mitchell-Cox is busy in the chat listing all of those points out, 1 to 5 of the definitely do and 1 to 3 of the possibly avoid. A few other comments. Rim jumps in and is saying here that teams can learn from mistakes, iterate on processes, and incorporate feedback to enhance project outcomes. Absolutely. I do hope that we are learning as we're doing. That's the whole point of project work, isn't it? It's what makes it fun and so professionally rewarding. So thank you, Rim. Great comment. Moving on in the comment side of things, we've got a couple more that I think we can draw upon. So if we could, that would be really great. And if we're stuck for a moment, then we'll move on to the next question. All right. So we seem to be a little bit stuck just right now. We'll move on. I think, Charlotte, if we can, we'll take our next question to the panel, please.
Thanks, Nick. We have a live question from one of our LinkedIn viewers. Ashik asks, what is a hybrid project management? Is it mixing agile and predictive methods in a project, using different approaches for different projects, or applying both?
Oh, my goodness me. Somebody had to do it, didn't they? Somebody had to put the cat in amongst the pigeons and the peacocks and the sparrows and the cats of varying sizes and all this kind of thing. So let's explore this tricky world, if we can, and remain friends around hybrid project management. Wijnand, let me start with you, my friend. You've built more bridges than anybody, I think, over your career.
Yeah, thank you.
How would you approach this question? It's a great question, by the way. It's one that is asked frequently.
It is actually a hype on LinkedIn nowadays to start discussions starting with hybrid project management. In actual fact, I don't believe something like that exists. So I'm totally opposed against the terminology of hybrid project management. project management is done in the way it's supposed to be, which fits the organization best and fits the teams best as they can see fit. A lot of organizations say, okay, we are going to do Agile and everybody needs to do Agile. It's the same like saying, okay, don't like coffee, but you have to drink coffee, right? So if you don't want to drink coffee, don't drink coffee. If you are used to working in a certain way, it doesn't mean you don't have to be open to other ways of working. But if it doesn't fit in the culture in your team, don't try it. Hybrid project management, if you might call it, it's just the way of governing the work to be done in the way that suits the teams best and the culture best in the organization.
Thank you so much. Mark, your thoughts, please. Is it myth or real? And what would you suggest to Afshak?
Yeah, I'm in line with Wijnand. Hybrid project management is just project management. It will take 1.5 years, and then it falls off of project management, and it's just project management. That's what it's all about. It's just helping your team, providing a great solution to your customers and users. And if it's an agile way of delivery or a more predictive way of delivery, it doesn't matter. You still need to get your solution out. You still need to make sure it's a quality solution you provide to your customers, which makes them happy and delivers value.
Absolutely. Thank you so much indeed. Giles, your thoughts, and then we're going to hear from Farah.
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of the word hybrid. I'm going to come in it from the other end. I actually like this term. I don't think we should be restricting organizations with the approaches that they want to choose. Okay. Now, we always know this. We hear this every time. Scrum is an immutable process. So if you are doing anything above the 17 pages of the Scrum guide, you are not doing Scrum. You are doing something that is hybrid. So as such, I really do think that actually, a lot of success can be had in organizations today because they create a contextually right way of working, which will take some of the best parts of potentially a project management capability, an agile way of working, something that deals with risk management the right way, an element of agile governance over the top of it. And therefore that creates something that is truly hybrid. And it is about, for me, it's not about sort of taking the company and crushing the life out of it with a particular framework. It's about taking that organization and nurturing it and supporting it with all the right supporting processes. So I've always been a big fan of hybrid, and hopefully long may that term continue.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I do recognise that. I do recognise particularly one example that springs to mind is in the aerospace industry, where they wouldn't necessarily call it hybrid, but what they would say is that due to the unique set of regulatory and manufacturing requirements in leading edge technology with complex systems and subsystems coming together to form one overall product, say Airbus might be a good example, then they tend to develop specific project management methodologies, tools, and techniques which relate to the requirements for their particular industry as a discrete manufacturer at pace and scale. So it's an interesting way of looking at it. What's right for one may not be exactly 100% right for another. Farah, rescue me from this world of tribalism. Your thoughts on hybrid project management, please.
Well, I really like this question because this is something that I hear a lot. Recently, I've had a client who asked me, Farah, well, within the teams, how can I make sure that the people that are working the operationals can balance between predictive methods and agile, how to make sure that they can move from one to another? Well, my answer is do what needs to be done. Whatever the techniques that you're using, experiment, try to figure out what works well, what does not work well. And do not act like it's a conflict, that it's like a fight and there had to be a winner. It's not the case. We're not saying that the agile manner or approaches, techniques, whatever you want to call them, are the winners, or the predictive ones are the winners and or the losers. This is not the thing that we need to figure out. What we need to figure out is what needs or what best suits what you're dealing with, your objectives, what you need to achieve, what you need to reach. Well, if you want to make some agile, some predictive, do as you wish. If you want to do 100% agile and you can move along with it, do as you wish. If you need to make a more predictive manner and 100% predictive, well, do it. As long as you achieve your goals and as long as the teams are embedded into that decision.
Thank you very much indeed. And that is the voice of experience, isn't it? It's about how you chart a course for your project in the context in which it is residing, if I can use that word. Wijnand, brother, you wanted to come back in with a final remark.
Yeah, I want to do a little rebuttal on Giles. Actually, I fully agree with what he said, the contents of what he said. The only thing I think is that when you call something hybrid project management, it says you mix methodologies. And that's what I am opposed against. I think you need to develop a methodology for your organization and pick the right things and the best things from those methodologies to suit your organization, just like Farah said, more or less. And I'm seeing that Giles wants to rebut also. I don't want to go into a discussion between two panelists, but hybrid, I think it gives a little bit more of you need to choose, whereas I'm saying as an organization, you need to develop and be innovative.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. So we do need to press on, everybody, but Giles.
I've got 2 seconds. I just want to say totally agree with Wijnand said. I mean, we are. That's the great thing with this panel discussion, right? Where we do come with our own opinions and voices, etc. But I still love the term.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much indeed. All right. Now, I think that debate's going to continue beyond this particular episode. So we have put the question to the audience. All right. So it's in the social chat already for you there. Do you agree with the term hybrid project management being used? And, just give us your thoughts. All right. We're not going to spin up a poll or anything like that. But, we do have the question out there for our producers to kind of give us your thoughts. All right. On that. However, in the meantime, we've got a lot of questions and we're going to run out of time, people. So we need to move on. So Charlotte, if we can, let's have our next question to the panel, please.
Thanks, Nick. We've got a question from Wijnand. Why would you start a project in an agile environment?
Okay. All right. Why would you? You can read this in so many different ways. All right. So Richard, why don't you start us off with your thoughts on why would you start a project in an agile environment?
Right. I would, starting point when you're looking at a project domain, I would use a sense-making model like the Kouwenhoven model. It's not a model. The Kouwenhoven framework we're talking about as a way of understanding the nature of the space that you are working in. So if the nature of it is highly complex. We talk about VUCA being a classic example of it. I would argue that you've got to approach with something that's in the complex space in an agile manner in order to probe and explore and understand and develop prototypes in order to make progress. However, if the nature of the domain you're working is not like that and you can do it up front, then maybe agility is not necessarily the right way of approaching it, but understanding the nature of the space is where you've got to start, and that's how you'd answer that question.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Interesting. And Mark, and then Farah.
If you are in an agile environment and you see the opportunity, maybe you're in need of some coordination and collaboration with different teams. And if they're autonomous teams, we need a bit of coordination. And the other one is projects are the most fun doing and getting the results out.
They really are. They really are. And I love that enthusiasm. It's Friday afternoon in Europe, okay? And we've got that right from the top of the stack. So I completely agree with that. It's infectious as well, isn't it? If you have energy, then your team's going to have energy. Everybody's going to have energy. Who could not buy into a project where there's passion and commitment, coming from the entire team, and especially from the project manager? Farah, your thoughts on starting projects in agile environments?
Well, I would say that there are so many triggers that would lead some companies or some teams into that agile transformation path. Some of you have already spoken about the VUCA environment, all those changes. I would say that a lot of companies today are moving toward that model because they want to occupy the market. They want to test something out. They want to get as much feedback as it's necessary for them to know whether they need to adjust, to pivot, to continue within their idea. So that's for me the best trigger. And I would add something else. Just please do not move on towards that path if you're just following a trend. It should not be your trigger.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Farah. Great answer. And what some amazing questions today. I think we do have just about time for one last question. Charlotte, if we could find one from the range that are coming in actually from the audience, then that would be great. So final question to the panel for today.
Thanks, Nick. Our last question is from Bina. What kind of support does a project manager need from the organization to run an agile project?
Yeah, it's a great question, this, because we do need to think about this. How do we support, enable, lift up, all right, the folks who are willing to step up to this particular role in our organizations? Mark, your thoughts on this. What kind of support does a project manager need?
I think it's the most underestimated role within projects, and that's PMO. And for me, PMO on different levels, project, program, and portfolio level. So you need to have somebody with an extra set of eyes and ears in the project, facilitating the entire project, and me as a PM. You can't do it alone. You need to be a team.
It's very interesting, the PMO, and I would ask on the fly, actually, if we could find a link through to the House of PMO certifications, because they can be really, really helpful. And as a project manager, you should be aware and should actually know about the roles and responsibilities within the PMO. But PMOs have evolved in the same way that project managers have evolved. And the way in which to go about their work is very different now to how it used to be. So I thoroughly recommend looking at the House of PMO certifications. There's a little code up on the screen right now for everybody. And also look them up online, because there's a very strong PMO community that the House of PMO actually lead. All right. So it's very worthwhile exploring that if you are a project professional. Thank you so much indeed. So I think what we'll do is we'll go to Wijnand actually next, and then Richard.
Well, as former director of a PMO, I fully agree with Mark, of course. A PMO is very important. One of the things that Agile really needs is support from the customer. So a lot of organizations have projects or teams that are working on products with internal customers. And those internal customers are actually not available to the developers, to the team that is actually developing their solution. And therefore, they are just trying and struggling on. So your organization really needs to know what Agile is and what it means for both the IT department, the solution development teams, but also for the customer, the support system around it. And Richard will probably agree with me that the alien within DSDM is actually the most of the part is customer based and not really solution development based. So be aware that your organization doesn't only just deliver a solution, but they deliver it together with the customer.
Thank you very much indeed. And Richard, your thoughts, then Giles.
Yeah, Wijnand's absolutely right. I won't go into the specific details of how you might do an agile project. Clearly agile project management was developed with agility in mind from the ground upwards. But the angle I was going to come at with this question was to look at the big picture of what does the world have to look like for the project manager to be successful. And we've already spoken about culture. Now, what a business can do is try to establish some of the principles of an agile culture. It's a huge task. Changing culture is not something you can just do overnight. It's a long term. This is a long game to do that. But encouraging the right leadership practices too. Again, training, awareness, promoting diversity, and all of the softer skills associated with leadership is exactly the sort of things if you want an agile project to be successful. But probably the one that limits projects most is actually governance. Very often, organizations have very rigid processes, and maybe they have no choice. They're heavily governed, regulated by third parties, government bodies, or whatever, and they have to work in that framework. But the organization can take steps such that governance can be agile, so you can move forward. You're not constantly stop, start in that development. So there are plenty of things organizations can do to make the project manager's job an awful lot easier. So that's where I'd be focusing.
Thank you so much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Richard. So Giles, your thoughts, and then I'm going to come to Bina.
Yeah, again, what Richard and Wijnand just have previously shared is spot on. I want to sort of just actually extend some of that stuff. One of the things I think a lot of people often think or believe when they're starting to run an agile project is that somehow it's going to be really easy, and because we do everything in short cycles. In fact, actually, running an agile project is at times much harder. There are many more things involved in running an agile project. It's just that we are realizing the value sooner than we might do in a traditional waterfall process. So for me, there's three things in supporting this project manager. Firstly, making sure that the leadership team is bought in and supporting the people doing this. The upper management, the leadership should be actively endorsing the new agile ways of working, and supplying the appropriate resources and the commitment. Secondly, it's training and education. Right? Again, they should be making sure they're setting up the people for success with the appropriate training and education that's actually required for those new ways of working in the organization. And then lastly, it's giving them, the project managers, that empowerment and autonomy such that they can go off and actually use these new ways of working that they've been trained in to actually make a success of the project or product increment that they are creating. So for me, there are a number of key things, and just do not presume that somehow doing a project in an agile way is actually going to be any easier than doing it in a traditional project management way.
Thank you very much indeed. And if you want to find out more about Agile project management, then you can follow the QR code on the screen, and that will take you through to a synopsis around the certifications, both at foundation and also at the more advanced practitioner and beyond level. So thank you very much indeed, Charles. Now, Bina, you raised the question in the first place. I kind of think that you know a lot of the answer to this, having coached and mentored and helped many people elevate their careers and their performance around the world. Is there anything that the panel skipped over or missed out that you'd like to emphasize?
No, because the main things have all been said. It's about supporting the project manager. It's about training. I was saying get the project manager trained in something like Agile PM, by APMG. Make sure that the education is there. So, for example, when I'm delivering courses on Agile PM, I am training the project managers. But when they go back, they need that support from the organization. So the senior management need to understand it's not a case of, project managers are being trained, let them get on with it. But there is that responsibility. So the organization also has to adopt this Agile mindset, also has to understand the behaviors and so on. Because if that doesn't happen, here, the PM's trying to do some work, there's a disconnect. And what Wijnand said was the customer has to be involved. So there's a kind of a responsibility that's needed by the organization, that they have to take on a different role. They have to approach things slightly differently. Because if that's not there, that change of mindset, that okay, we're going to do things differently. If they don't adopt that, then it's going to be hard for the PM to run an agile project.
Totally agree with that. Thank you so much indeed, Bina. Well, it's been a really fascinating episode today. Kath Convery's comment in the chat you can all see on the screen right now. And I really echo that sentiment as well, that observation rather, Kath. So thank you very much indeed. Now, if you're sitting thinking that you've made a connection today with any of the panel, then please do reach out to them. All of our LinkedIn profiles are available on the APMG International website. So just go to apmginternational.com, click on events, find today's event, and then you can link yourself professionally on LinkedIn to any of the members of the panel and reach out to them and start working with them. So we would most welcome that kind of professional request. So Giles, if you wouldn't mind starting us off with your closing remarks for today's episode, please.
Sure, Nick. Thanks. It's great always doing these with all of the other participants here. For me, it's the new learning you get from hearing different perspective, different points of view from your own thinking, right? But we need to be there supporting the project management community the best way possible, whether they're doing things traditionally or whether they're moving into new agile ways of working. There's enough sort of courses and training materials and support there from lots of organizations. And so again, as you said, come to the APMG site, have a look at the courses. And, if there's anything there that it looks like it's going to help you out, fantastic.
Absolutely. Find out more. Bina, your thoughts, please, and then Farah.
If you're wondering what an agile mindset is, you don't have to be working on a project. Just think about what you do on a day-to-day basis. Instead of doing the same old thing, why not try something new? Do something, learn from it, and that's like being agile.
Isn't it just, in a nutshell? Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bina. Farah, your reflections on today, and then we'll go to Wijnand.
Well, my takeaways for today would be consider Agile as a way to reduce risks and exploit opportunities, and avoid, I would say, preconceived ideas in order to make sure that you're exploiting Agile, the methods, the techniques, whatever you want, in the best way to achieve your goals.
Thank you so much. Wijnand and then Mark.
So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Good questions, the answers. I learned a lot from the other panelists. But for me, the main takeaway is that the methodology shouldn't be just dogmatically entered into an organization. You as an organization should just think what is suitable for you and adopt and adapt.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Thank you so much indeed. Mark, please, and then Richard.
Of course, I enjoyed the session. I enjoy projects. I enjoy an agile mindset. I enjoy collaboration. So let's remember we were born agile, and it's an abbreviation. It's all goes into lovely enhancement. That's what we're dealing with.
Brilliant. Okay, I love that one. Shanice, you have to be quick to be able to capture that and put it out in the social chat. Thank you so much, Mark. Really echo that sentiment. Richard, your thoughts, then we'll hear from Charlotte.
Well, I'd see that the common theme here, many of the comments, the reflections are, it's all about having this growth mindset. About to be an agile project manager, you need to be constantly learning. You need to be able to know who to go to pick up new ideas, and be open to be coached or to take mentoring on a personal level. So many of these ideas is attending events like this and listening to other people who've got slightly different experiences and making you realize maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. So keep an open mind, keep learning.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And the very best athletes, and we have a summer of the Olympics, it's summer in the Northern Hemisphere at least. So when the Olympics are on, people will thank their coaches for helping them get their performance to be their personal best, or indeed up to that elite level where they're able to stand on, the podium and get the recognition from the crowd. So everybody needs a coach. Doesn't matter how good you are, everybody needs a coach. Charlotte, your reflection on today.
Just to say a big thank you to all of our panelists and all to our viewers for all of your questions and commentary. It's fantastic to see. And I think that we're all agile in all aspects of our lives. Today, we've been agile on, well, the panelists have, on what questions they're going to answer and what they're going to be hit with next with regards to questions that we're all interested in hearing their amazing answers to.
Thank you so much indeed. Beautifully summarised. Thank you, Charlotte. Well, very well done, everybody. Panel, on behalf of all of our producers online, great job. Thank you very much indeed for your time and attention today. And on behalf of the panel, I want to do a shout out, please, to everybody who's made a contribution online today. There's been some lovely discussion in the chat. We've not had time to reflect all of it, but thank you for joining in those debates, and apologies to the social team for my about turn on the polling. Never mind, anyway. Thank you very much. Now then, I think it's fair to say that if you jump over to the APMG International website, then you'll find the answers to more than 2,300 or so questions that have been previously asked on Level Up and all of our different events around the world. All of the answers are there for you. It's totally free of charge, and it's a really excellent resource to connect you with experts from all over the world. And you may, of course, listen to the audio versions of the shows on your preferred podcast platform. Just search for APMG International, Level Up Your Career, and you'll find us easily enough. Looking ahead, this coming Monday, the 6th, is actually a public holiday in the UK, so there's no Level Up event on that day. But on Thursday, the 9th, we've got two events coming up. One is in Spanish language. It's timed at 11 a.m. in Spain, 10 a.m. in the UK. And that's all about design thinking. So if you have a Spanish-speaking colleague or you are Spanish-speaking yourself, you might like to join that. The details are on our website. And then there's a second event at noon UK time where the team are exploring a guide to self-assessment for PMO professionals. This came up a little earlier in today's show, all about the role of the PMO and how you can self-assess and think about your own career development and where you're up to. Level Up will then return on Friday, the 10th of May, with a show all about big data and why it's so critically important in 2024. Don't forget, please do give this video a like on YouTube and subscribe. It really helps other folks to find the content, and just ask us and we will send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you too can join us here on the panel and level up your career with APMG. Thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you next time.